day, everyone. I'm Dr. Dolapos Int. I'm a family physician at the Department of Family Medicine, Morehouse. It's a pleasure for me today to be discussing about diabetes. Diabetes is a chronic illness and it is so rampant. It's rampant in such that from 1990 we had just 4 states in the US that were prevalent with diabetes of over 8 to 10%. And as time progressed, in 2000, almost 80% of the states were endemic with diabetes. And as of 2010, it was recorded that all the states in the United States were all endemic with diabetes. Diabetes is a chronic illness. It's estimated that 23 million people are actually diagnosed with diabetes, and 57 million are not even aware that they have diabetes. That's just how rampant diabetes is and how prevalent and important that we all understand what diabetes is all about. So today, for a few minutes, I'm just going to be talking to you about what diabetes is, what are the signs and symptoms, how do we diagnose it, and how do we manage. I believe strongly that knowledge is power, and with that power that you inquire, that you'll be able to conquer diabetes. Diabetes is not a disease that's going to go away, but it's one that we can conquer and not allow it to conquer us with the acquired knowledge that we've received. So let's say a few words about diabetes. What is diabetes? Now, diabetes in layman's term just refers to high sugar in the blood. Now, the way the body is made up, whenever you eat, it's going to be converted to sugar. And once it's converted to sugar and it's transmitted into the bloodstream, the pancreas, which is an organ in the body, just like the liver, the stomach, or the brain are organs in the body, so is the pancreas. And it produces a hormone, which is a substance that helps to work and break down and carry the sugar that is in the bloodstream to the cells, meaning the organs, for energy. Now, in the absence of the pancreas, or in the absence of insulin working efficiently, then we have what we call diabetes. The sugar is high levels in the bloodstream. Now, we have various types of diabetes, but for the simplicity of this focus, we're going to talk about 2 main types. We have type 1, which is usually seen in the younger age group. These are patients that have absolutely no insulin, and that's why their symptoms are manifested much earlier. These are teenagers, less than 35-year-old individuals. And then the other one is type 2, and this is seen usually in the older patients. These are patients that have a pancreas, yes, and have some insulin, but because of maybe genetic factors or maybe because of lifestyle habits, gradually the insulin that is supposed to be functioning is not working the way it's supposed to. It's not responding in such the way that it carries the sugar that is in the bloodstream out of the bloodstream to the cells. Now, what are some of the signs and symptoms? How can you recognize diabetes? I think it's important for us to know how to recognize it. There's several complaints that patients come in with. Remember, because you have sugar in the bloodstream, it can damage nerve cells. It can damage anywhere that you have blood flowing, and the body, that's practically everywhere. So it can affect the eyes where you have blurred vision. It can affect the nerves. It can affect the feet. You have an infection, you have a cut, it doesn't heal properly because the blood is just thick with sugar. It's not functioning the way it's supposed to. Oxygen is not flowing the way it's supposed to. It affects the kidney. You hear patients complaining that they're peeing a lot, they're drinking a lot. Some people lose lots of weight or gain. Some people are just tired and fatigued. There are just several complaints that patients come in with. Now, when I refer to signs, of what do you see in such patients? So they're tired, very drained half of the time. They can't see. They, all of a sudden they just lose sight. And I had a particular patient that just woke up one morning and couldn't see, and he was surprised at such a sudden onset. But those are some of the symptoms that patients complain of, and those are the signs that you see. Now, how do we diagnose diabetes? The most common way to diagnose diabetes is by blood test. Of course, there is urine, but the way that we diagnose is 3 steps with the blood. And this is when you have an 8-hour fasting sugar, and if it is higher than 126 micrograms per DL. 2 occasions, 126 without eating for at least 8 hours, that is a diagnosis of diabetes. Now, the most common one is when you have sugars of greater than 200. With all the complaints that I mentioned earlier, and is it blurred vision? Are you tired? Are you weak? Are you peeing a lot, drinking a lot? All those symptoms accompanied with a high number is a diagnosis. Now, we also have glucose tolerance test, and that's where you go for a 2-3 hour sugar test and you check your numbers. Recently, the breakthrough that we had last year with diabetes is that A1C, which was a test that was used to screen to monitor sugar, was actually now pronounced to be useful for diagnosing. So this is something that you can inquire more from your physicians. Now let's go into the diabetes care. Like I mentioned earlier, and I know that it's a devastating disease. A lot of people ask the question, why me? Why now? What's my life going to turn into? As a family physician, I want to encourage everyone today that it is a disease, yes, that could appear to devastate you, but it is one that it's a team effort. You're not alone. You have a host of doctors that can work with you. We have support groups. I think the important thing is for you to understand what is in store for you. How can you manage this disease? How can we work together? Is it your eye doctor? Is it your foot doctor? Are your family members, your friends? How can we work together to make sure that you're not overcome by this disease? Now, the important thing is that you have to make sure that you have your regular doctor visits, because when you go for your doctor visits, this is where they monitor your sugars. They make sure that you have your blood pressure checked. They make sure that your kidneys are fine. They make sure that your cholesterol is fine. It's a team effort. This is not the time for you to feel that you're all alone, or that you just give up and not do anything about it, because that's where the danger comes in, when you give up and you don't want to take charge of the disease. Now, the management of diabetes is a juggling act. It's 24/7. This is where we talk about the medication, we talk about exercise, and we talk about what you eat. These 3 components need to be juggled on a constant basis to get your sugar managed to where it's supposed to be. Now let's talk about the medications. We have different medications. We have the pills, which are the oral medications. Several medications are out there, and the big role of the medications that are taken by mouth is it's supposed to help the pancreas produce the insulin, either that way, or wake it up, or stimulate it to work and function the way it's supposed to, or slow down how quick you break your starch, your sugar when you eat, to slow down how quick it's broken into starch. Now we have insulin. Insulin, I know it sounds scary. I hate needles myself. A lot of people are fearful of needles. But when patients are on insulin, I just want to mention, for type 1, usually that's the most common way of treatment. And the reason being, like I said, type 1, they have absolutely no insulin. So they do need insulin to help, so that whenever they eat, they can convert all the sugar to the cells. They can carry the sugar to the cells where it's needed for energy. Type 2, most patients start with pill, but I want to note here that it's when or anytime it's said that you need to continue with insulin, not because you've done anything wrong or that you have lost all the hope of management with pills. It's just that everybody, the pancreas, the evolution of the pancreas is at some point it's not going to be able to keep up with the insulin production. So at that point, introducing insulin is the best option. Now we're going to take a few minutes break, and I've given you a lot of information. I would like for you to digest that, and then we'll come back and talk about exercise as well as nutrition. Thank you. back, everyone. Before we went on the break, we discussed briefly what diabetes is, the importance of knowing what diabetes is. We talked about the signs and symptoms. How do we diagnose diabetes? How do we manage diabetes? And we talked briefly about the oral medication. And I mentioned about insulin, which is another method of treatment. It is definitely a scary step, both for the physician as well as for patients, to be on insulin because of the fear of needles, feeling that it's a personal failure. But like I mentioned, the evolution of diabetes at some point, regardless of what you do, of course, eating and exercising does help to slow the progression, but at some point that might just be the only solution. Now, before we proceed with nutrition, I just want to quickly mention that with insulin, the different types, you have the short-acting and you have the long-acting. Short-acting could be where you take the insulin with your meals. The long-acting could be that it works over 24 hours. And if you do have diabetes, it's important to have this discussion with your physician so that they can elaborate more in detail about the different types of insulin. It's important that you remember that having diabetes, part of the medication is that you need to monitor your sugars regularly. At least twice we recommend, one before breakfast and the second time 2 hours after a meal. The reason why it's important is so that you can work together with your physician. You have some control as to what your numbers are supposed to be. Fasting numbers really are supposed to be between 70 and 110, strictly speaking. Other recommendations by the ADA, which is the American Association of Diabetes, they recommend 120. Some places see 130. Now, 2 hours after a meal, if you're following the endocrinologist guideline, it shouldn't be greater than 140. But then for the ADA guidelines, it's 180. So let's take a few minutes and talk about nutrition and exercise. Going back to the same point, it's a constant juggling 24/7 of what your medications, nutrition, as well as exercise. Now, nutrition, I'm just going to scratch the surface because it really is a deep topic. But I want everyone to understand that there are three main parts of nutrition, and I want to start by saying that I don't want you to I don't want you to feel sorry for your household, that because you have diabetes, oh goodness, everybody else is just going to have to suffer like I am in terms of what I'm eating. No, having diabetes and the way you change your lifestyle really is applicable for everybody in the home. We all do need to eat healthy. We need to pay attention, one, to our calories intake. How much are we supposed to eat? And this is really based on our weight to start with and our age. So calorie is important. If you're on the bigger side, usually we recommend between 1200 to 1400. If you're on the smaller side, you can go as far as 1800 calories per day. Now, secondly, we refer to our nutrients. How much of that are we taking? How much starch are we taking? How much protein? How much fat are we having in our daily meals? There is recommendations for all this. Please talk with your providers so that you can get more information about this. And thirdly, we talk about our portions. Portion is very important. I think that if there's anything that you're going to take away from what I'm talking about today on nutrition, is our portions. We do all need to pay attention to how much we eat and how much we put in our plate, especially just being diabetic, or just all of us generally. When we pick our plates to eat, let me give you an example. Our plate should look like this, where it's divided in half. And the first half should be vegetables. Vegetable meaning broccoli, your green beans, your peas, your carrots, cabbage. All that really should take at least half of your plate. Vegetables are good for us. It helps us digest our meals easily. It helps to reduce how quick our body converts sugar. So vegetables really should be half of our plates. And then when you see the other half, we should have 1/4 of it, just the other half. When you break it in half, the other one portion should be starch. That's where we talk about our rice. That's where we talk about our potato. That should just be the other portion. Now, I am also guilty of this, and I'm working on it daily, so we're all in this together, where our starch, our rice takes over the whole plate, but really should be this portion. And protein will refer to, are we talking about fish, chicken, beef? We're referring more to lean meat, but preferably chicken as well as fish. It's a better choice. Talking about our eggs, those are our proteins. Then takes the other half. Now, whenever we eat, always remember to have vegetables as well as proteins, because all together that will reduce how quick your starch is converted. I think those are the main highlights about nutrition. Again, it's just a scratch surface, but bearing that in mind, I think it will make a big difference. Lots of water. Key things is not to skip meals, because when you skip meal, your body holds on to the food that you've eaten and doesn't burn it. Your metabolism is slow. So those are some key things we need to know. We need to drink more water. Replace that with our sodas. 1 soda a day is recommended, that you will gain almost 15 pounds. These are calories that we do not need, extra calories that just tries to find its way deposited in our body, in the different organs. Definitely we have to make sure that we're less stressed, because when you're stressed, then your body builds cortisol levels, and cortisol levels are not good for the body, because it just slows down how quick you metabolize your food. Now let's talk about exercise. Why is exercise important? Exercise is important for several reasons. It helps, key point here is that exercise helps your blood flow. It helps the blood flow in the body, helps you carry oxygen. It helps also to decrease the fatty acids. Fatty acids are the ones that are deposited in the fat cells, particularly around the abdomen. And when you have fat cells in high numbers, it just unfortunately prevents the insulin that you have from functioning the way it's supposed to function. Now, in the presence of exercise, we have different exercise. If we want to talk about aerobic exercises, when you walk or run or jog, those kind of exercise are just as good as the anaerobic exercise. And those exercises when you do strength training, you lift weights, you just do anything to strengthen those muscles. It's important to strengthen the muscles, because this is where you burn all the food that you've eaten. It helps your metabolism function well. Now, exercise is also good because it helps your blood pressure to improve circulation, and it decreases how much fluid you retain. I mean, it was interesting when the day I got the revelation about just how much exercise for 30 minutes can make your blood pressure go down for about 16 hours. I mean, that was like a revelation for me. So it really is recommended that at least 4 or 5 times a week, 30 minutes to exercise will keep your heart pumping well. Not only that, you lose weight because you burn calories. The key thing here is exercising consistently. Even if it is 10 minutes, it's better than nothing to exercise. Now, endorphins are released when you exercise. What are endorphins? Those are just feel good chemicals. When you have that in your body, it helps you sleep better. You have less cortisol, which is a high hormone in the body, that it's a bad hormone that whenever it's in high levels, it just makes you stress, and then your body stores fat. So all together, all the organs work efficiently and effectively. So exercise really is important, and particularly for patients that have diabetes. I want to note here that before you exercise, please check your sugars, because you don't want to be too low, because the moment you go out to exercise, your sugar is going to come down. So you do have to bear in mind what your numbers are, and do make sure you eat. Now, if your numbers are lower than 70, that is low sugar, and you do need to eat something. At this point, I want to talk about a few complications that can come up from diabetes, and then we will wrap up our discussion. We have long-term complications, and we have short-term complications. Now, what do I mean by long-term? Meaning complications that can come from having diabetes for a long time and not controlling it. Again, taking us back to what my introductory statement, that high levels of sugar in the blood makes your blood thick. It's in the wrong place. It's supposed to be in the cells, the organs, to give you energy. So when it's in the bloodstream, it's damaging cells. It's like children that are supposed to be picked up at the bus stop. The school bus goes to the bus stop and the kids don't get picked up. You can imagine what the kids will be doing out there at the bus stop. They'll be misbehaving and doing mischief. It's the same thing with the sugars. When they're high in the bloodstream, they damage the nerves. Not only do they damage the vessels, they damage the nerves. You have people complain of numbness and tingling. You have people that get pricked or hurt themselves, their foot or or their hand, and can't feel, and that ends up becoming ulcers. And that's where you hear that people get amputations here and there. A lot of people just become really weak and drained and tired. Short-term complications are what happens to you right away from having high sugars or low sugars. When you have low sugars, it's, from just using the words of a patient, it's the worst feeling ever, like pending doom. You feel like your whole you have no grip over life. You have tremors. You're weak. You're fatigued. You're just feeling just out of experience feeling. Now, this is usually when people's sugars are lower than 70, and that's why it's important, going back to what I said, that you need to monitor your sugars regularly to ensure that your numbers are within the range that it's supposed to be. Now, having said that, just as bad as low sugars are, high sugars are equally bad. Anything greater than 200s and heading for the 250s, that is where you hear people go into a diabetic coma, and that is not good. Symptoms are about the same, but there's more than that. There's patients going to a coma. You can have a coma too if your sugars are low. So those are some of the short-term complications. Now, this really brings us to the end of our discussion. I want us to take charge. When you get the knowledge and the information to empower you, it is then in your hands to take charge. This information might be for you. It might be for a family member. It might be for a church member, or just somebody that you know. Please share the information around. Let's be responsible with ourselves. Let us do our exams as much as possible. There are health fairs that are accessible. Just a lot of things. I mean, if insurance is an issue, there are alternatives, but we do need to take charge. We cannot make excuses and say, well, what you don't know can hurt you. But yes, it can, because when it then bombards the body, it might just be too late. So I hope that I've been able to shed some light about diabetes. Please feel free to contact me for more information. My email address is DBABALOLA, that's dbabalola, at MSM, that's Morehouse School of Medicine, .edu. Thank you very much. I want you all to stay motivated and take charge of your health. Thank you.